Our presentation is pretty informal, like Dolores said. We've just got a bunch of slides from the work that's been accomplished over the last 7 or 8 years on behalf of DOT, and we've got several techniques that were used, and yeah, that's it. We've used several techniques over the years, and this is just an overview again of just a few of the projects and the resolution and the types of investigations that have been undertaken, mostly through Section 106 compliance efforts. So, what do I do?
Put the arrow.
Where's the
Well,
arrow?
you might want to sit.
You can sit here if you want.
Sit there.
And then here your arrow's right here. Just hit over.
All right. So first up, GPR relocation of burials. And where's Sean? Right there. A lot of this is going to look familiar to Sean because his company has done several of these investigations for us over the years. And you know, for about a decade, we have been trying to implement some type of remote sensing technique in several of our field investigations to save us time or to try to avoid some of the resources that might be present within transportation projects. And as the resolution and the equipment has gotten better, we have certainly found much better results, and we've been able to get more information quicker to the folks who are making design alignment decisions. And this is a really good example. This is Mecklenburg County. Paul, you can jump in here too. The anomalies that you see on the top screen are grave shafts that were in the unmarked portion of the cemetery. Is that correct? So you can really see how many there are and how we probably wouldn't have been able to verify if anything was out there if we hadn't been able to use the GPR equipment that Sean's got. Okay, again, just some different imagery, some additional GPR stuff that has been done on our behalf. If you look, you can see we deal in things called area potential effects. That's that shape that parallels the road on both sides. And what we have to do, as part of 106, Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, we go out and we try and identify and evaluate all the historic properties. And again, the remote sensing stuff for us has been very useful in situations involving around potential cemetery and grave relocations, because obviously we don't want to excavate all these graves, but we do want to know where they are to try to avoid them. The shot on the right is a different cemetery. That's Oak Lawn. Again, that's Mecklenburg County. And Sean or Paul can jump in here. You've got a large anomaly that's in that bottom right corner of that elongated rectangle box. What was that?
Potential structure.
Right, okay, that's the structural location. And again, you know, we're not doing any intensive field investigations at this point on these. These were all preliminary, trying to find grave shafts or graves that might be present within project limits. Now, you know, those were exclusively GPR products. Now, again, Sean, you guys did this one for us. This is moving on into the geophysical survey realm. This is the Currituck Ferry Terminal that we had a survey request. It's within a historic district. It's one that we handled internally within DOT to make decisions on whether we need to do archaeology or not. We felt that we did. And as part of that, we wanted to go out and get a handle on a couple of features that may or may not have been present. And one of those was the septic field that was purported to be out there. And just, if you look, you see the linear features moving from the left image on down through. Those are slices going farther down in depth, and you can see where the septic drain lines are, and then there's the midpoint of it, and then there's the base of them that I think was at about 1 meter plus. Is that right? Yeah. So again, you know, when we talk about using for DOT remote sensing techniques, we're just as interested in ruling out areas for investigation as we are in finding things, because it's going to save, you know, cost-benefit analysis for the limited resources that we have, we want to be able to use it for that as well. Other aspects, non-terrestrial, we've used underwater magnetometer and side scan sonar surveys. Paul, you may want to point out what the bottom left slide is versus the one on the top right.
Well, the bottom left is the actual computer screen in live image when we were actually in the boat on the river. The top right is post-processing image created. What you can tell is that there are still targets that were located during the survey, but the fact remains those still need to be verified as to what they are, whether they be a crab pot or something else.
And again, our primary focus is where are our transportation projects related to these anomalies. And if we can avoid these things, we don't always go back out and verify what they may or may not be. If there's a mechanism in play for multiple alternatives for a project, we have a lot of these anomalies that may be showing up in a channel. You know, underwater archaeology is fairly expensive. So we would first try to avoid hitting these anomalies without doing a verification of what they actually may be. This is some additional underwater work that we've had done. That is the Queen Street Bridge, the Lenore, and the Bonner Bridge in Dare County. And Paul, why don't you jump in with these two?
Well, the Lenore County one just shows the bridge pilings from the Civil War bridge crossing of the river right there, and it's like three versions of the actual crossing. And the bottom one for the Bonner Bridge, those are actual crab pots.
Right. So we're not going to try to avoid those. We may actually end up hitting the ground. But this is worth noting again because it's not one or an individual technique. It's underwater magnetometer and side scan sonar. So the geophysical stuff that we have done on several projects, it's just not one aspect of that. It sometimes takes more than one to really get a clear picture of what's going on. And here's this is bathymetric studies. This gives you hard bottom, soft bottom. A lot of this information for this project was gathered actually by the Corps of Engineers. And again, this is just another example of something that we don't produce, but it is remote sensing, and we try to look at that to help assist us in making determinations of how we're going to try to look at the stream crossings or the channel crossings for some of our bigger projects. And then we have accomplished several soil chemistry studies on multiple projects, but really we do not embark upon this until we're already in the data recovery phase of our investigations.
Yeah, there are some soil chem analyses have been used for at the location stage, but we haven't really looked in depth with XRF or PXRF at all. This is mainly like the wet chemistry side of things, and this is really at the data recovery stage, but it's still, it shows the non-invasive nature of doing soil chem depending on how the soil samples are collected. I mean, essentially you can simply collect the soil samples using your core or your auger and taking it at a 10-centimeter interlevels going down. Or, I mean, you can open up a big giant trench and take it from the soil profile itself. And here you can see there are direct correlations with artifact counts with soil chem concentrations, which kind of shows the general activity areas and the essential pathways between those activity areas based on the soil chem analyses.
Again, these are some examples of a few sites where we have gone beyond the actual remote sensing techniques and completed field investigations to help verify what those studies indicated. You've got the geomorph stuff. I think that's Keith Sarimer in the trench. I'm sure a lot of you guys know Keith. And, you know, up at the Tuckasegee site, they're doing the soil resistivity studies. That was a wholesale data recovery that occurred after that, but we used those studies to help dictate where we were going to place some of our larger blocks and some of the test units associated with that one. And I'll let Paul talk about the Windsor bypass.
Well, I think these shots showing the geomorph trenches were essentially put in because some folks may think, oh, hey, we can do geomorph and it's non-invasive, it's not going to destroy the site. Well, you kind of have to dig a gigantic trench across the site to figure out how the landform itself was created.
How does that tie into remote sensing, you guys? Really, I mean, Peggy, what can you do about geomorph with various types of remote sensing? That would be a good question.
I think we threw that one in because it's related to the soil, I can't say that word, to the soil studies that keep those for us on occasion. Then, I guess you could say, well, he is not doing the ground disturbing of the site, but yet he's using the trenches that we placed out there, or the test units even, to collect his samples. So we consider that just another component that goes along with the remote sensing techniques to try to get a handle on what's going on the site.
I mean, essentially to the very similar to the soil count, I guess if you did sediment analyses from the soil samples too, that could be deemed non-invasive. Instead of opening up a trench, again, just using your soil core to collect all the samples across the site. I mean, it may be more labor intensive. You'd have to be able to set up a real grid. You'd take a whole bunch of samples, a lot more than you actually think you should. But
so I guess it's kind of a stretch. Yeah. Lastly, this is some metal detector survey work that was done down there at Fort Naroka. We had a road widening project, almost adjacent to the fort itself, and the power poles that you see are, our limits would be just to the left of those in that lower right-hand picture. And what we try to do there, and again, this is where it gets down to what are the project specific, what is the cost-benefit analysis for us, what are we going to learn by doing this ahead of the field investigations. What we committed to doing here is doing metal detector sweeps all along this alignment and doing flag of this and doing our systematic shovel test survey as well as excavating where these hits were, and we had some pretty good results as far as collecting some material culture. Then we came back through and graded the entire alignment moving forward and found that the hits that we had did have some correlate with where the historic period features were popping up. Incidentally, we didn't find any features associated with the fort. We did find, I think, a middle woodland feature that obviously we did not hit with the metal detector.
So what features did you hit with the metal detector?
We had I think it was an 1870s infield well that was up on top of the ridge that was overlooking where the fort's located, and that was probably the best thing that we actually found. And Paul wanted me to throw this in. We also have on GIS. No, those are not real scale cemetery locations, but that's something we've been trying to do for, I guess, the better part of 14 years. Steve and Dolores and other folks at OSA know that we've got that original GIS-based model that we developed, and that model is based on all the remote sensing data as well as some other hard studies that were done. So we're still plugging away at that. And Paul, why don't you describe what you've got here?
I got a lot of cemeteries. That's pretty much what I have there. There's been a couple more counties filled in since then. That just shows the first two stages of looking at data, which is looking at the quad maps for what's been marked on them and looking at parcel data for each of the counties where it actually says that there's some form of cemetery, and using all the variations of the word cemetery and its spellings that each county has.
And this gets to the big picture item, or at least one of them for us, for doing any of the studies that we do, remote or otherwise, but we're talking about remote techniques today, is how are we going to house all this information that we collect. We tend to take it and we'll do a a magnetometer survey, and we'll go through the Section 106 process. We'll get all the approvals, we'll get some good information, and then we just, where does it go? What's the repository for that? How is that going to be accessed? Do we need to make that available to other folks? What are the mechanisms that are going to be in place to do that? And that's something we'd like some feedback from everybody here today, because we don't really have an answer. We're not the gatekeepers of all this information, although we collect a lot of the information, and we certainly have it available, but we're just concerned that all the stuff that we're generating, perhaps we're not putting it out there like we should. So, and with that, this is some of the equipment Paul wants to purchase. It's cutting edge. Now, just if anybody's got any questions about our stuff.
Most of your stuff is available to us, right?
It is. It is. We've got all the technical reports. We're actually going through and digitizing everything that we've got. We're doing PDFs, almost all of our major reports. Even trying to figure out the reports that we don't have, where are they, so we can get our hands on a copy to put those in some type of digital format.
Are the digital data available?
The digital data is yes and no. It depends. We actually have technical reports that are on floppy disks that we can't read. We have GI. Well, I mean, we've been around since '79 doing this. At least the institution has.
There's some places you can get them, converted. Yeah, that'll be a good thing.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So
we probably have paper copies of all those.
Yeah.
OSA has 99%.
We'll be scanning.
The scanning part.
Yeah, we may have a few that just materialized on our shelves for whatever reason. Now, the digital data from the last several years, we have collected GPS coordinate data for most of the sites that we identify and evaluate.
Let's think of actually the geophysical data, like the magnetometry data.
I'm sure that we can make arrangements to get that information. The firms have it if we don't have it, and if there's a mechanism to transfer that, then we can get copies of it, or we can post it. We have a fairly substantial, I think it's called the FTS site, that we can post huge amounts of data to for transfer. And if you've got a DOT ID and password, which I think most folks in the academic community or professional community can get, then those things can be posted there for download.
Okay, great.
And you can also access, I think the DOT's GIS website has all the links to other types of data like LiDAR that we have for each of the counties and whatnot. And that's just a straight website. You can just go straight to it and link to whatever you need. There may be some download time issues.
Yeah, it can take a while to get that.
Like it might have to be downloaded before 9 o'clock in the morning, or downloaded after 5
at night. Yeah.
And they're adding data to that website all the time.
Okay.
So
So
check in.
y'all, we've reflown. I guess we're in the process. North Carolina, we process of flying LiDAR. You guys fly your own? Is that what you're doing as well? Or?
We used to fly our own. I think we partner now with other state agencies. But yeah, there's a big initiative underway. I think that our photogrammetry folks are involved in to get all of that together. I don't know the time frame for that, but yeah, that's ongoing right now.
Yeah.
I think they're pushing for drones of their own.
Roy's got one.
They are.
We're all pushing for drones.
They want drones.
We all want drones.
Our pilots are not happy about that.
Our pilots are obsolete. You're not a drone pilot.
Anything else? All right, well, thanks.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Do we
Yay. Yeah, one of the things we need to work on is how to make all this stuff accessible for everybody.
Or do I need to go down and see?
Cloud storage site.
Yeah.
That's a good idea,
okay.
Charlie.
We'll work on
Blade
that.
farm
This
this
one, I
one.
think.
Yeah.
Get that.
Okay.
That down
Check.
things to do.
Yeah, okay.
Cool.
I'll put that on my list.
Public loves the pictures.
That might be something one of the universities does. I mean, you can get access to storage, but I'm not sure they would. Too far beyond the confines of UCU.
Right.
No one's getting up, so I'll go now.
The state library.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, they
One into the chair.
All right.
I don't know what the latest is, but the state archives are charged with maintaining or archiving GIS data for all state agencies. But they're also charged with archiving, documents for all state agencies, and it's a constant struggle to have the capacity or, get people to cough it up. So it varies from agency to agency. But I don't know what the latest is, particularly on the GIS. I mean, that popped up probably 3 years ago with them.
So some of the things, that you were talking about, we've talked about, so, wait, I forgot to put, y'all were supposed to check this for me. It's always the graduate students' fault, blah, 2014.
February's blah anyway.
So anyway.
I understood, Roy. I knew where the problem lay.
It's always the graduate students. So, I don't know, does anybody know what the symbol is up here on the right?
You mean your
Left.
All right.
Yeah. What is it, Roy?
Good catch.
Tell us, Roy.
Tell us.
You don't know?
No.
Yeah. Everybody seen
Doppler.
The Big Bang Theory?
Doppler.
Sheldon witnessed the Doppler effect.
Oh.
That was my. Hey, that's a nerd joke. I do want to thank Linda and my two graduate students. We all kind of sat around and did this, and I hope they feel free to jump in at any time, and please ask questions if I'm not clear, because I'm generally not clear.
Right, you want to stand and have me advance the slides for you?
It might be easier to stand, yeah.
It'd be easier on him.
Be easier on me because I move around a lot. I think we found in our stuff that the GPR and the gradiometer are really good instruments to have in the field. They complement each other, but they can show different stuff, and that's what I really like about them. We've got in areas where they've confirmed findings, and that's always good. And then we've got areas where they've shown completely different things, and that's always good. So I think you want to think about them both, and it's being very different because they sort of work very different, and they give very different information. So next slide. We've been working a little bit out. This is one of Jacob's dissertation sites at the Austin House, the State Historic site, and you could just sort of really see the difference. We, as an old remote sensor, I love remote sensing, so we always get the oldest aerial photos we can find and start there and then sort of move forward. And I want to stop right now because have you all heard about the conferences coming up at Duke University?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they said
Yeah.
last decade was the decade of GIS for archaeology, and this decade will be the decade of remote sensing in archaeology. I think it's really true, but if you haven't, I'll send you, hit me with an email, I'll send you the website. It looks really good. I encourage us all to go, and it's going to be really cool, and everyone I know is after drones, and we're playing with them too, but it's all about...
Is it October?
Yeah.
It's October, yeah. So it's a ways off. And
It's an international conference as well, and has a lot of the kind of bigwig people with money who do remote sensing.
The first time it's been in the United States.
Yeah.
Scott's involved.
Yeah, Scott Madry's involved in it.
And we need to be strong and show them what North Americanists can do.
That's right. So anyway, you can see we've got them lined up here, the gradiometer versus the GPR, and you can see where they confirm, especially like here and here. Originally, John had asked us to see if both Johns, the one who was at the site and John Mintz, we could see if there was a kitchen out behind the Austin house. So we just laid out, sort of dodged trees. Then you can really see the signal here and here. We don't know that's the kitchen, of course, but there's some sort of structure right there, and you can see this signal and that one that shows up. We also found, of course, the old path that comes out through there That showed up really well. There's something there. And then we're looking out in the, Jacob expanded it all out into the field, which was, they were looking for possible the mass burial that they had out there where they buried people. We don't know that we found it. We have found something very interesting right here. And you can see it's right here as well. It's like posts or something. In this big area right in here, and here, we know exactly what that was. We saw the old barn on the old photos back in the 50s. So we matched it up, and it was like, okay, well, that's simple. We don't have to go look at that for anything. That's pretty much what it is. Other interesting thing we found was right here. McAtee, I think a lot of you know Mac, the metal detector. John had him out there, and he came up to us and said, well, what I think happened, partially what happened out here, is that this whole, we should be finding much more earlier, like revolutionary colonial artifacts. I think it was bulldozed at some point and kind of leveled out and, you know, was flattened somehow. And this whole thing right here, if you look in the profile, we don't have that slide, do we, for that profile? No. If you look here, you can see a surface going, sloping right down and another surface right over it. So what we think, obviously, is that is the original slope of that hill, and then it's just what happened, what he said, that it had been leveled out at some point. So I thought that was kind of interesting on these things. Of course, we've mapped it all out. Next slide. This sort of shows that first little area we found. You can see it's about less than a half a meter underneath with a real nice return right in here. It's about maybe 4.5 meters wide. You can also see, I think that's where the dipole right here, right by the tree stump. When we first started hitting, we said, well, maybe it's part of that tree stump, and then we kept hitting it. As we went away and walked across it. It came out more rectangular, so, well, it's not the tree stump. It's something else. So we kind of like that, and looking at it, and I think it shows some real information on what may be either a privy or a kitchen. And especially if it got bulldozed, it may just be part of a cellar or something if that area was leveled off. Yeah, there we go. That was the one we were just looking at. We come down here. That's the next little feature we found. You can see how it goes there. And again, the vertical profile. We definitely have something it's quite a bit deeper. It's below 0.5, and it really has a surface down there about 0.75 meters deep. So it may be joint. You know, it may be.
What's the detail shot there suggest to you?
Of this one?
No, yeah, right here.
This one?
It has
Just
straight
more
edges.
detail, yeah.
More detail, or
Yeah.
could be a privy or something to that effect. So,
Giant.
yeah, because it squares up like that. But you know, who knows? In all the photos we looked at, we could see no detail of what these things were. They were not apparent on the ground, so it's cool right across there. And see
Is there any thought going and looking to see what they are?
Yes, there's a lot of thought on that. Yes.
Jacob's dissertation.
Jacob has that planned out ahead, and John supporting it. So we're going to
Little peaks.
go out there and dig little holes and peek in
Get a
there.
permit.
We got your hand. We got you covered. John's right behind you there.
Are you a felon? So that's
No,
gonna make a
Jacob.
difference.
No, Jacob.
Oh, okay.
Jacob, what is there, a law against felony now?
No.
But to get a permit, you got to be not a felon.
Oh.
No.
Isn't that true?
No.
Don't you have to have a criminal background check? Then
Yes,
what the
but-
hell did I have to
But
get myself
you have to
fingerprinted?
have a criminal background check, but just because you're a
'Cause they
convicted
know
felon
you.
doesn't mean you can't get a permit. They just
Well, what if I just fess up that I am a convicted felon?
Doesn't matter.
I believe
You still have to have a background check.
We don't discriminate against felons.
Good to know.
We just need to know.
Oh, okay.
We don't. Well, actually, we don't, but somebody
Who does?
People on the third floor.
Oh, okay. That sounds very ominous. Yeah, the
We're
third
in the
one.
basement.
That's like the people in Mossman in our university. We Anyway, next slide. Another thing we did, you know, it's always great to go see things that you found, right? We found this, the old thing that Tom Hargrove did a long time ago of a kiln site. And so one of the things we were thinking, a friend of ours, Linda Carnes, you all know Linda Carnes McNaughton, next slide, she wanted to ask us if we come and look at the Loy site in Alamance, that's right near our house, to see if there was a kiln out there, because she wanted to, you know, maybe possibly get a permit and do some archaeology. So she wanted to first have us look at it before she went out there and did, because they found several clusters of artifacts out there. And so she was, well, I said, well, we'll do it. It'll be a good project. When an undergraduate was doing this for his undergraduate, one of Linda's students for his honors thesis. So we took him out there, we laid in a grid, and the first part they were sure they found all these artifacts right in here. They were sure the kiln would be right there. Then it was like, okay, well, it has to be right here. And we did 230 by 30 meters, and I don't see a kiln there now. Maybe Sean or Sarah or someone else might see a kiln, but I don't think we found it. It may be, you know, the old house and structure were right in here, and the old smoke shop was right in here, but there was so much, you know, still metal and stuff on the ground. There's no reason to get your gradiometer out there, because it's going to show a lot. You know, it's going to show that metal. So, you know, I'm thinking if it's anywhere, you know, they're going to have reused, if it was a kiln, they probably reused it as a smokehouse or something. But, you know, the point being, I think some of these technologies can save time. You know, I think it's a lot quicker to lay out a grid and walk a 30 by 30 with your magnetometer and see what you have out there, as opposed to digging a whole bunch of little shovel tests and saying, well, did I just miss it? You know, because I don't know if we've missed it, I just don't think it's right there.
That's a weird thing.
Next slide. I work at the courthouse, radiometer. And I like these because they show a lot of things we found and didn't found. There's a lot of information on this, and we're still looking at and trying to pick this stuff apart. Right here was where Trawick and Co. worked long ago, up in here. Right, right in here. They worked right in there where the woods are now, is where they thought they found that the limb burials, where they did find the limb burial. We'll look at this little structure right here, but it's interesting. It looks like, and Sean and Sarah help us with this, it looks like there's a path or something leading right up in there. And one of the units Linda put in right down here, we did in fact see a bunch of different soil coloration right on the edge of that unit down low that could indicate that sort of thing. We're out here in the woods, and there's a lot of metal and barbed wire out there. Next slide. And you can see the GPR of the same area. So you're seeing a lot of different things. You can notice that path is nowhere to be seen, but you can see some big structures here at this point. There's one disappearing into those woods. Obviously, the road shows up real well. That's the road they have out there now, New Garden Road. And this feature is what's really, to me, very interesting, because it's a low place in the woods, and it's where Trawick said he thought the retreat road was. And he dug and just got to this hard surface, and they just stopped. And we actually poked a hole down further and found colonial era artifacts. So there's two things. It could be like a road or a gully, because there are reports of both of those in the battle right there at the third line. The third line's somewhere out in there, and that's really still debated a lot. And our most recent thing, which Stacy is really working on, is we got guys from Auburn University came out and with a terrestrial LiDAR. So we shot sort of down around here and into the road, or excuse me, into the woods to see if, because that sort of swale goes down and goes out, and this whole thing, this feature, disappears into the woods. So we're wanting to see, does it extend down there? Is there any surface feature of it down there? And Stacy's busy processing that now. And there's 92 million points in that data set, which is, you know, those things are really overwhelming, but they're way cool. It's just a really cool data set, and we hope to have some more out of that soon at the Battlefield Conference down in Columbia. So this is part of that landscape, part of that historic landscape, and if it does, in fact, because Trewick said he traced this feature out and could see it, but when we went out there and all of us looking around the woods, years have gone by, leaf clutter, we couldn't. So we're hoping maybe with the LiDAR we can see it, and then we want to sort of extrude a 3D model. That's sort of Stacy's dissertation there, to take it from below ground to the surface and above, and if we put structures on there as well, we can get those. Next slide. And that's just sort of, you know, you can see it on the gradiometer, our little wall, and you can see it with the GPR, and then you can see the unit. So, hopefully happy with that. I like these data. Hey, I'm a remote sensor, so I really like these data. I'm just fascinated with remote sensing. Obviously, I wouldn't go into it. But I think the continuous data, back in the old days, we used to say that you have, you know, like the raster versus the vector data set, and one's more accurate and one's, that's all gone by the by now. But, you know, when you have, for North Carolina, LiDAR of the whole state, and we're reflying all the air photos at half-foot resolution, I mean, dear Lord, it's a mind-boggling. But we overlaid some old work that had been done with just auger test and some line GPR data. And I always make this point on this one, if we can cover these surfaces continuously, we don't have that problem of a perfectly designed testing strategy to miss everything. That's what we see right here. You could not have designed that strategy to, and then, you know, that's not bad archaeology. They're just doing the typical cruciform pattern, but you missed everything on that. We even found, you can even match some of these anomalies up, not all of them, but a lot of them we found where they put the auger holes in with this thing. We didn't know it then, it was only coming back when we overlaid it. Well, there it is, you know. All these things, so we're getting all this, we're getting so much more data in that whole continuous view under the ground that you can get this way that you just can't do anywhere else.
And we also found the majority of Trewick's grid and the features he had found, and they've been looking for them since the 70s, on and off. So, not to say it isn't luck, but it's also hard work and having two different kinds of machines.
What do you mean luck? Yeah, Jacob and me there.
Well, that's and Joel.
Okay, even with a handicap, you got is what you're saying. Next slide.